All right, so this is going to be a different kind of conversation than what we normally have, but I'm really excited about it. And it's a pricing model. So I always jump into things. So this is Lee. Really excited to be talking to you guys about pricing. And there's 5 different pricing models that web designers tend to kind of jump to. Well, maybe there's obviously more than that, but there's 4 really popular ones, and then kind of like our DoubleStack model that I want to get into. And the idea is, what's the best approach to pricing high ticket web design? Now, if it's low ticket, like if you're charging like $1,000 or less or whatever, this doesn't really apply. But if you want to start getting your pricing into like the 3 to 5, maybe 10, maybe even up to $15,000, like in that range, let's say like 5 to 15 grand. What are some good models for all of that? I've got my little a little exercise thing. So a lot of times when I'm on the phone or whatever, I like squeeze this thing. I love this thing. But anyway, so what are some great models for pricing? And so I'm going to go through like what I would consider like the 4 kind of top ones that are the most popular. And some of them are might kind of, a little kind of fringe. And then we'll get into like the double stack one, which is what I feel like combines all of the best components of everything that we're going to talk about while avoiding all the negative stuff. So that's kind of the roadmap for today. And so let's just kind of jump into it. So the first one is kind of like the standard 50-50 split is what I call it. And so what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to write up all this stuff that we're talking about and like kind of create it kind of in written form and also post that online as well. So if you want to kind of, read through everything and kind of get the details from it later, then that'll be available too. But for now, let's just kind of talk through it. The standard 50-50 split. So that's the thing where you figure out what the cost of the website is, and then you charge 50% up front. Then you start doing the work and everything, and then right before you launch the site, or like as you're like launching it, you collect the final 50% payment. So now you've got all your money, and you launch the site, and then you kind of move into like hosting and maintenance and stuff after that or whatever. So that's kind of the standard one. And so for each one of these models that we're going to go through, let's kind of define what it is, talk about the good stuff, and then talk about the bad stuff. And then we can see, which one you think is going to work best for you. So the standard 50-50 split is what we just talked about there. I think that, is there a blog post equivalent of this? Thanks again. Yes, that's a question that just came in. There's going to be a blog post equivalent of this. So I'm going to write all this stuff out into a big blog post, and we'll have that too. So we'll have the video, we'll have the blog post, got the podcast. So if you want to listen to this on, Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or Spotify or whatever, it's all the places. We'll even have a YouTube video for it. So it'll be in all the places. But so what's so good about the 50-50 split? Well, the big thing and the best thing that's so great about the 50-50 split is it's super easy. It's like everybody kind of understands it. Clients are kind of preconditioned to even expect that that's how you're going to charge for your services. And so there's no shock. There's no teaching of how the pricing works. There's nothing fancy or tricky. It's just that's what it is. Super simple structure. Everybody understands it. And that's pretty cool. And that's also why most people kind of go at it. It's kind of intuitively the way you would try. Like you can't just do everything for free up front and then pay. And you wouldn't want to collect all the money up front and then do all the work. So you just kind of 50-50 split it. And that's kind of how it works. But then there's some bad parts about that. And so what are the bad parts? Well, the bad parts are, it's kind of a big upfront cost for clients. It's like they basically have to pay for the entire thing before they start getting any results out of the project, before they get anything out of it. So that's kind of a big issue. And so you begin to hear objections like, that's a bit out of my budget. What can we do to lower the price? Can you work with me on the price? Or, I can't afford that now, but let me get back to you later. Maybe they take your proposal and shop it around to other people to see if they can kind of get the same thing for less or whatever, that kind of an idea. And so, so that's kind of the bad part of the 50-50 split. Another bad part is that they tend to be just one and done projects. If there's going to be any sort of residual or recurring revenue that comes out of it, it's an upsell later. It's an afterthought. It's like, okay, well, we built the site. Well, now do you want to also do this other stuff? And the vast majority of the time, clients are going to say no. They weren't really budgeting for it. They weren't expecting it. They're not really looking for it. A lot of times, they even have other people in mind for all of the marketing and the business development, everything that comes after launching the site. They just need the site. So So there's no real recurring revenue out of the 50-50 split thing. And and then another big problem with it is you're competing with the whole world in the sense that like everybody does it the same way. And it's like, okay, we're going to build a website. It's going to be on WordPress. There's going to be 15 pages. We're going to host it on Flywheel. We're going to hook it up to MailChimp. We're going to do social media management. We're going to add SEO. And it's like your proposal sounds like everybody else's proposal. And if you say, and it costs $10,000, then glad you're like, oh no, why does it cost 10 times more than everybody else? Let me go, let me think about it. And what they really mean is let me go see if I can get it cheaper somewhere else, because there's plenty of other people to look to. And so you're literally competing with like the whole world. It's like, if they don't work with you, maybe there's some other local developer they could work with, or if they don't want to stay local, they could go on to Upwork or Fiverr or look for a Facebook ad or a Craigslist ad or whatever. And you literally can shop it across the entire world. And so that tends to be a big problem with kind of the 50-50 split. So those are the good things. It's pretty easy to understand. People kind of get it. That's kind of what they're expecting. But then you've got, no recurring revenue. They're one and done. You're competing with everybody. It's a big upfront cost to get started, big barrier to entry for clients. So that's kind of the issue with the standard 50-50 split. So then what's the other one? So the other most popular method for like high ticket web design contracts is, well, what if we just do hourly, right? Like we're just a time and materials kind of a project. And you tend to see this often in software development projects too, maybe even more so in software than in just straight up web design or digital marketing. But it's in both places. And it's the time and materials approach or just the hourly approach. And there's some good components to that. Some really good components, meaning you get paid for all your time. Like you basically eliminate the risk to yourself, because it's like whatever hours you put into it, you just charge for the hours and you get paid for the time. And that's great. So that takes, like, if there's scope creep or new features get added, and or like if one of the things that happens when working with clients is that you kind of create something, they see what you created, and then it spawns new ideas in their minds, especially when you're working with like entrepreneurs who are notorious for having lots of ideas. They see a thing, they begin to like it and be like, oh, you know what? That's triggering another idea. What if we did this other stuff too? And if you're doing time and materials, you can just roll with it, right? Because they just pay for the extra time. And you don't end up, getting into a situation where the project's bigger than the original estimate and you don't have to renegotiate. So if you just say, hey, there's gonna be some more time, they say fine, and you just move on. And that's great. So that's a really good benefit of the time and materials approach. Another one is the client actually gets the lowest price possible. So what I mean by that is, a lot of times if you're going to do a fixed price, like if you're going to do the standard 50-50 that we just talked about, then what you'll do, normally speaking, is you'll think through how much time is this going to take? Like, based on what we've talked about and what I need to do for the client, what's the scope here? Like, how do we get our heads around what we're actually doing? And then you say, okay, well, best case scenario, I think I can do it in 40 hours. And then you think, well, what about if it's not the best case scenario? And then you pad it, And so I've actually got this formula that I've put together over all the years where, as far as the padding goes, it's like, well, if it's a project that's going to be like under 40 hours, something like that, then what I'll usually do is I'll probably pad the hours by about 50%. And the reason I say 50% is because, like, say you've got like a 20-hour project, well, it's probably pretty likely that some other things might come up into the mix, and well, give yourself an extra 10 hours just in case other stuff comes up. And so instead of just saying, if you think it's going to be 20, I usually bill 30 if I'm going to do like a fixed. If I'm going to be locked to the price, then I like to do 30. I do that for a couple of reasons. Sometimes there's unexpected stuff that comes up. Sometimes things that are expected just kind of take longer than you would think that they would. And then the third thing is always, invariably, like I can't remember a time where this didn't happen, where the client came up with a new idea that they wanted to pursue. And if you've already got a little bit of a pad in the hours that you think you're going to take, you can just say, okay, that's fine. Let's just do that. I don't need to change the price. And that's very helpful. That people appreciate that. It's just a good way to roll. So if it tends to be like a smaller project, I tend to pad the hours by about half, because you're only buying yourself an extra 7 or 8, maybe 10 hours, whatever, with these smaller projects. If it's a bigger project, like if it's going to go over 40 hours, I tend to pad it by about a third. So if I think I'm going to spend like 100 hours doing something, then maybe I'll say I'll put 130 hours in the estimate, something like that. Because again, unexpected stuff, things that you do expect, but it just takes longer. The client comes up with new ideas. It's just whatever. Maybe you need to buy some extra stock photography you weren't planning on, whatever. You're just giving yourself some wiggle room. And so, but with time and materials, you don't have to do that. You can just say, hey, I'm just going to give you what it is. And so the client ends up getting the best deal because they don't have to pay for the pad. And you don't have to take the risk of what if we blow past the padding. So everybody gets the best deal. You get paid for all your time and no more, which means that the client's not paying for extra time that wasn't used, but you're not going to get stuck holding the bag either if things go longer. So that's a really nice benefit of time and materials. And in fact, I think it's the best benefit. It's like everybody really gets the best of both worlds. Like everyone's getting the best deal. So that's really great with time and material. But then there's problems, and there's big problems. And the reason that most people can't acquire clients with the time and material style proposal is because nobody knows what it costs. It's like nobody has any idea what the end price is going to be, so what ends up happening is people begin to start going down the time and materials path, and they say, yeah, whatever, here, that's how I like to do things. And then the client says, well, what's your hourly rate? And then you say, I don't know, $85 an hour. And they say, well, how many hours do you think this is going to take? And then then you slip back into the 50-50 split model where you're just trying to get the client some kind of an idea of what everything costs. And so it never really wraps up to the way that you think, because the client needs to know, well, can I afford it? Because like, what if I get to the point where I'm like 7 or 8 or 10 grand into it and I still don't have what I need, but I kind of blew through all my savings, all my budget. Like I don't have any more money than that, but we're not done yet. So what am I supposed to do? And that's the biggest problem. It's like nobody really knows what it costs. So then you begin to try to estimate anyway, and then you're not really doing time and materials anymore. You end up getting locked in, and that means you're back to the 50-50 split model. So that's really the worst part of it. But again, you tend to be in a situation where, again, you're kind of competing against the rest of the world. But you're not. But now instead of doing it in terms of like the full fixed project cost, you're doing it based on hourly rates. And the hourly rate issue is so stupid because the hourly rate doesn't mean anything to anybody. It's like, what if I say my hourly rate's $20 an hour? Then you're like, oh, that's a great hourly rate. That's super cheap, especially if somebody's doing it as long as you. Oh, wow, that's great. $20 an hour. But then what if it takes me forever, right? What if it takes me like 100 hours when it could take somebody else 10? And so it's like, you don't know. You don't really know how many hours there are in the project if you just know what the rate is. Or what if I say, hey, I'm $250 an hour. I've been doing this for my whole life. I know everything now. Hire me. I'm an expert. And then people are, well, $250 an hour. That's too expensive. I can't afford that. It's like, but what if I can do it in 1 hour when it's going to take somebody else, all week? So it's like hourly rates don't mean anything. It just kind of frightens clients based on this big number per hour. They don't want to get into it, and they don't realize that, it doesn't mean anything. And so that's a kind of a big issue too. It's like, but if you do time and materials, people are going to say, what's your hourly rate? And then you got to deal with that. So that tends to be a problem. So people don't know the cost. You have to deal with the hourly rate. You're competing with everybody else. Well, why do you cost $85 an hour when I see people on Upwork for $8 an hour or whatever? It's like, so you have that kind of competition issue going on. But then maybe even the biggest problem, but definitely a huge problem, is you lock yourself into hourly billing, which stinks. So you really don't want to be in that situation if you can avoid it, because you're kind of giving yourself this price ceiling. It's like, well, you can't really bump up your hourly rate to something huge, because of course then you lose all your clients if you say you charge $500 an hour or something, but you can't make more hours either. And so it's like you're stuck. You don't have any way to really scale that. And so, that's a big problem too. So, clients don't know the price, you're competing with the whole world, the hourly rates don't mean anything. You lock yourself into this kind of hourly rate ceiling. So that's kind of the bad issue of hourly rates. But those are the two big popular ones. Like everybody kind of gets the idea with the standard 50-50 split and the hourly kind of time and material sort of pricing. So, and then we begin to say, okay, well, there's good things with both of those. There's also bad things with both of those. What can we do to kind of emphasize the good stuff and kind of get rid of the bad stuff? And so people start getting creative with some of their pricing strategies. And so that's where like website leasing comes into play, where nobody really owns the website. They just kind of lease it from you. And so this is really designed to, get into a situation where you kind of eliminate that initial upfront barrier to entry. Where if it's going to be like $7,000 to build this site or whatever, or 10 grand, or like some kind of big ticket price, rather than that, what if I just sell it for $450 a month? Something like that. It's like if you wanted to charge, say you want to charge like $5,000, and you said, well, instead of charging $5,000, I'm going to charge $450 per month. Well, now the client only has to come up with $450 to say yes instead of $5,000. So that's a big deal. Plus, if they stay with me for a year, then I'm over $5,000 anyways, at $400 or something like that, at $450 a month for 12 months. So that's pretty good because now you're making a little bit of money. And what if they stay for 2 years? Boom, now you're like up over $10,000. That's even better, right? So that's like all awesome on that side. So you get potentially even more money. You then also get, hey Ramon, good to see you. You also get recurring revenue. So that's going to be a big thing. So like the other two, like the standard 50-50 split and the hourly rates, they're one and done style projects almost all the time, unless you can like upsell into like some kind of a retainer or whatever later as an afterthought. But with website leasing, the recurring revenue is built into the mix right off the bat. And so it's like, that's a big deal. So like if you keep the client longer than a year, you usually really score. So, you can maybe even get like a $10,000 out of like a $5,000 website, something like that. So that's really cool. So recurring revenue is there. That means stability to income is there. Low barrier to entry for the client. They don't have to come up with $5,000 right away. So that's easier to say yes. The price is super clear, right? So that's another really strong benefit of website leasing or renting the website or whatever is there's no ambiguity of what it costs. You say it's going to cost you $450 and here's what you get, and you just move on. Everybody knows what the price is. So all that's really good. But then there's the bad side. So what's the bad side of website leasing? Well, the biggest bad side is you have these misaligned incentives in the sense that if you say, I'm going to build you a $5,000 website, but I'm only going to charge you $450, especially if you're just getting started. Like if this is your main stream of income, you're going to be thinking, well, geez, I got to get through this site as fast as I can so I can get to the next guy that's going to pay me $450, because how can I live my whole month or my whole couple of months on $450? It's like you can't. So you're going to be burning through your savings. You're going to be burning through whatever resources you have to be able to kind of ramp up to this. And what that means is you'll be shortcutting. You'll be just working as fast as you can, burning yourself out. Like all of these issues aren't really what your client wants. What your client wants is for you to be there doing your best work so they get the best results out of it. And when you're thinking, well, geez, even if it's gonna, even off of 2 months, I'm still not even gonna hit the $1,000 mark. And so I can't just throw all my time into it. And so that's where the misaligned incentives come in. And then it gets really frustrating. And then there's resentment. Then it's just a recipe for messing up relationships. So that's a big issue. You're not setting yourself up to succeed is another. So you have the misaligned incentives. And right off the bat, you know that I don't have the time, I don't have the resources to really be successful at all of this stuff. And if you're not setting yourself up to succeed, then that means your clients aren't going to get the results out of it. And then the other thing is you take on all the risk, right? So like, what if you go in there and you think, okay, I'm gonna really pour myself into this and set it up right, even though I'm only making $450, but by the end of the year, you really just kind of invest into it. And then the client says, hey, this isn't going to work. I just had some problems, whatever. It could be legit, right? Like they got some health problems that popped up, or the coronavirus comes through and they can't stay open, or whatever it might be. Then, and they say, man, I'm going to have to cancel. And they're only like, a month or 2 or 3 into the mix, but you put all the work in. And so you don't get it. And you can't solve that. Like even if you had like an annual contract that said, hey, if you cancel the contract, you have to pay out more later. It's really, really hard to collect on that. It's not impossible. It can be done, but it's just difficult, really difficult. Because what if they just flat out can't? Why would they cancel if they could keep going? So a lot of times you get into these really bad situations where they like legitimately can't pay you, and you're stuck wishing you were getting paid because you just did all this work. And so you can't really, even if you have contracts, it's really difficult to get them to pay anyway. Because what are you gonna do? Go to small claims court and all of this other stuff. It's like even with that, it's like it's difficult. Even with small claims court, they don't, the court doesn't even make the person pay. They just say they should. And so then if you have to kind of go through the whole process of garnering wages or whatever, the whole thing about trying to collect from it, it's just a giant mess. And so the truth is, most people never take legal action. They don't have a legal team. They don't go to small claims court, and they just eat it. And so that means you take on all the risk. So that's kind of a bad thing for website leasing. You put all the work in up front, and you take on all the risk. And then the other side too is, what does it mean about the client's mindset if they're not willing to invest in their own business, right? Are they just dabbling? Are they serious? Are they committed? So you tend to attract clients that are more likely to quit than the people who are really invested in and kind of financially prepared to lift their business off the ground. So that's kind of an issue when it comes to website leasing. So you do have the good, which is recurring revenue, low barrier to entry, super clear price points. But you also have the bad, which is misaligned incentives. You're not set up to succeed. You take on all the risk. So, so that's a thing to consider. Then there's another kind of fancy approach. So like the fourth model is kind of the rank and rent model, which is relatively new. I mean, it's not as old as the other ones, but it's been around a long time. And the rank and rent model is kind of unique in the fact that you do tons of work up front. Like you find a good market, like small engine repair, for example, something like that, where you feel like you could actually build a website, get traffic, actually get traffic coming into your website, and it's branded generically. So you're kind of building it for yourself, and you're just trying to get traffic for people who want small engine repair, who live in Richmond, Virginia, that's where I live, and that kind of a thing. And you think, well, okay, so what do I need to do? So I got to build the website. I'm going to have to do some content marketing or blogging or whatever, and maybe even do some podcasting or whatever, just whatever you can do to kind of build a community around your website, especially local, because, small engine repair, you got to take the engine to get the repair. So, you're usually dealing with like a local market. And then you think, okay, well, great, boom, I'm getting some traffic. People are filling out my contact form or whatever. Now let's actually go find a small engine repair shop that I can just sell these leads to, or rent this website to, or whatever, and then they begin to rent the site from you, or you sell the leads or whatever. And that's really cool, and that's worked out pretty well for some people, which is why it's a thing. And there's some good stuff. So I mean, it's pretty fun. Like right off the bat, it's kind of fun to build a site like that, because you've got the time, you're putting some effort into it, and you're beginning to see the traffic build, and it's exciting to see your SEO rankings go up, and it's like, for me anyway, it's fun. It's like it's a cool thing to do, and that's kind of a benefit from it, just to kind of get that ball rolling. And it's also a really easy sell, which is another thing, because if you show a small engine repair business that, hey, look, I've got this small engine repair website, and look at the metrics here. Look how much traffic we're getting with organic SEO, and look how many leads are coming to the site, and look what you've got here. All I have to do is just flip the switch, and now all those leads are coming to you, and it's like guaranteed traffic, guaranteed leads, because I'm already getting them. That's a pretty easy sell. So that's really nice. And it's significant recurring revenue too. It's like you can sell something like this at a significantly higher rate than just generic kind of website leasing, where you just kind of build the site, but you don't really have any traffic or anything running through it yet. And so those are some really cool points. Like, for example, what if you built a site to get leads for real estate? That would be a big thing, especially in your local market. And you got some traffic going up, and you got people kind of coming to your site looking for local events, and all of these different kinds of things that were happening, and you were generating some leads. Then what if you sold those leads to a local real estate agent, and then maybe you sold them for like $50 a piece or something like that, and you were getting like 20 a month coming through, and what is that? It's like $1,000 a month. You could lease the site for easily for $1,000 a month, if not more. Like, I know Zillow, they charge, depending on what market you're in, they charge somewhere between like $20 to $60 per lead that you can kind of get through Zillow. And Zillow is like the giant of the rank and rent concept. Like, they've built a website that gets tons of traffic, tons of, like, they're like the number one real estate website on the earth, right? And so, real estate agents can kind of subscribe to Zillow and get some leads. And so it's a little bit different from a traditional kind of normal, like, local website for rank and rent. But they've ranked this awesome website. Like, if you're looking for a house, the first place you go is Zillow, and then they can just kind of farm out leads to real estate agents. And depending on what zip codes you're in and kind of what the market's like in that area, they will basically charge you somewhere around 20 to 60 bucks per lead, something like that. But just to kind of put that in perspective, like if you were charging 50 bucks per lead, whether it's for real estate or for small engine repair, for buying appliances or roofing or whatever it might be, and you were doing like 20 a month or something like that, that's less than one a day. You could rent that out for $1,000 every month. So you got recurring revenue, easy sell. People love it. It's fun to kind of do. It's scalable because you can do multiple, right? You can do a bunch. You don't have to just do one. Build 50, right? And rank and rent all of them. And now you've really got this like portfolio of valuable online properties, and you're ranking and renting and scoring major coin. So that's like a big deal. So you got like this really valuable portfolio. All of that stuff seems really good. So that's kind of the good side of the rank and rent. But then there's the bad side. So what's the bad side? Massive risk up front. Massive risk up front. More risk than any of the other ones, because you're taking on the responsibility of building a site, figuring out what the right market is, generating the traffic. There's cost oftentimes involved. You're trying to build backlinks. You're trying to do everything you can to kind of get the traffic going, and you might never do it. It could be a situation where you just don't win at that, and you just never rank the website to a point where anybody would ever want to rent it. And even if you do a good job, it's usually at least 6 months of time. But by the time you build the site, create the content, do all the writing, and if you're not doing the writing yourself, maybe you're outsourcing the writing to somebody else, and so now you're paying for that. And so you're building up all of this debt, whether it's time debt or actual financial debt. It's just, you're investing into it, and you don't know if it's ever going to work. You could have picked a bad market, or somebody else could jump in with more funding and more power than you and just kind of eclipse you or whatever. And all the work you did is literally for nothing. You never get the traffic to the point where anybody ever wants to rent the site. So massive risk up front, super long runway to profitability. At least 6 months, I would say, just because you're going to be depending a lot on organic traffic, local SEO, and just to get Google to recognize your site, if it's a new domain, it's going to take several months, usually at least 3, more like 6 on average. And from my personal experience, to really get to the point where you really can see that curve go up with your traffic, you could be looking at over a year. And so, but if you do, then you've got a major upside. Like if you actually can make it, if you can bring it together, the good is good, but that's pretty bad. So massive risk up front, long runway to success, and it's hard to find the right market. That's another big issue. The like what you're really looking for is a local market where the leads are worth something, right? It can't just be like dog walking or something like that. It's got to be something where the leads are valuable enough to actually sell. So there's that. But you need the competition to be low enough so that you can actually rank a site for it. So you're looking for high value leads and low competition in your market area. And that's a hard thing to do because everyone in the world is looking for that. Like if the lead is high value, then everyone's already going to be kind of fighting for it. Like that's the whole idea. And so to find that kind of a market, it's really difficult. Like for example, how are you going to overcome Zillow if you want to sell real estate leads? Like that's a challenging thing to do. I'm not saying it's impossible, I'm just saying it's really, really hard. Thus the whole concept of the massive risk up front and the long runway to profitability. And so you think about that. So now we've kind of gone through the big 4. The last 2 are kind of interesting too. And one of the reasons I want to go through those 2 is because if you spend any time on the internet or on Facebook or whatever, just kind of looking at how people sell websites, you're going to come across all this stuff. And maybe you come across the whole rank and rent idea. People say, oh, we're making millions. You got this huge portfolio of all these great sites, bringing in all this money. And they only talk about the good side of all of those things. And then it's up to you to discover the bad side on your own after you buy their course to learn how to do all this stuff or whatever. So hopefully, if nothing else, all of that information is going to be really helpful kind of up front as you're beginning to think through, what do I want to do to make more money as a web designer? Like, are there some creative ways to go about it? Like what are some different options out there? And, I've looked at all of them. I've either done all of them, explored all of them, all of these things have been around for a while and I've been kind of involved. And so I just wanted to tell you the good and the bad so you can kind of see kind of what's going on. But then the question is, well, is there any way to take like the majority of the good stuff and kind of chunk that together and avoid the majority of the bad stuff and kind of chunk all that together. Like, is there a model that takes all the good and rejects all the bad? And if so, what would that look like, and how can we pull all of that together? So for example, the good stuff. When I talk about the good stuff, what I mean is high earning potential, recurring revenue, a pricing structure that's clear and that people can understand. It's easy to sell and it's fun, and like everybody's liking it, like everybody's winning. It's fun to do. Like, that's the good stuff. And then the bad stuff is, well, how can we avoid things like misaligned incentives, where your incentive and your client's incentive aren't really lined up, and so you're kind of competing with each other. And how can we avoid a situation where you have to take all the risk and not giving yourself the resources and the time to actually be successful? And how can we make sure there's a short runway to profitability so that you can put in the work and actually do it and actually build a business off of it without just kind of crossing your fingers and hoping that you pick the right market or whatever, with the whole rank and rent thing. So let's avoid the long runway to profitability. So make money right away rather than having to wait for months. And not locking yourself into that price ceiling with the hourly billing. So make sure that you can scale it, right? So how can we avoid that stuff while focusing on all of the good stuff? And that's how I came up with the whole DoubleStack model for pricing. And basically the way that I do the pricing through DoubleStack, like when I'm working with the DoubleStackers and we're trying to figure out, well, how do we put the financial model for your business together? Then there's two phases to the mix. There's the pre-launch setup. There's the post-launch setup. The pre-launch setup is like the building of the website, writing the copy, doing the setting up the tools that you're going to need for social media management, for email marketing, list building, for lead magnets, funnels, video marketing, whatever you need to do as far as the tools are concerned, and setting everything up. Of course, there's also brand and design and actually getting the messaging straight in the first place for your client. All of that kind of stuff, it kind of goes bloop over there into the pre-launch phase of the website where you actually build things out. Then you launch the site. Then you move into the post-launch phase where you then use all the stuff that you just set up. And that's where the recurring revenue comes in. And it's usually it's usually like a 1/3, 2/3 kind of thing in terms of the revenue that you make. You make about 1/3 of your revenue over the course of the year with the initial build, and then about 2/3 of your revenue off of the retainer side. And I use the word retainer because it's an all-encompassing thing. It's not just a WordPress maintenance plan, although WordPress maintenance is part of it. So for the retainer, you would do things like hosting, backups, security, whatever, all the stuff you need to do to keep the site up and running and healthy and all that stuff. But that would be a small part of the overall retainer. The big part of it is, what do you do to use the tools you just set up? And of course, in the context of whatever your market is, there'll be different tools. But drip campaigns, sales funnels, landing pages, lead magnets, building the email list in the first place, running a podcast, doing YouTube stuff, whatever it might be that you need to do for your client, that's kind of on the back end. That's the post-launch phase. So you have two phases. And so what that means is you've got money now and you've got money later. You kind of spread the cost of the overall project out over time, so that it's a lower barrier to entry than it otherwise would be if you chunked it all up front. So you kind of have the lower barrier to entry aspect of things going on. So now you have super high earning potential, because usually the annual value of a client's around $15,000. So that's really nice. And so you've got the high earning potential, you've got the recurring revenue, you've got a price structure that's really clear, because you tell people, here's what it's going to cost to build, here's what we're going to do after we build. So you end up having an upfront cost and a monthly revenue cost, super clear. So there's that. So that makes it easier to sell. But the thing that makes it really easy to sell is you shift the focus of the value away from the individual technical components of what you're doing onto the business development results that come from it. And so that's an abstract thing to say. I understand that. I know it's abstract to think about that, but that's the key. And the big picture behind all of it is everybody wins behind this whole thing, because it's one of these situations where you think about the profitability of the client, you think about your own profitability, and you kind of add it all up together to make sure that you've got something that matters. And so it sets you apart too. It's a thing where people can look at what you're offering and say, oh yeah, I really do need to work with Megan because she's actually going to be able to create this whole new business for me. And I understand how if I were to set up these tools and then she used them with me, that means I get more revenue. How much more? Maybe 50 grand a year more, maybe 100 grand a year more. Like, it could be something like that. And then you think, okay, well, what's the value of the project? And it's not trying to get your client to feel some kind of value on the technical side of things. It's you're showing them, hey, look, if we do these things, you might double your revenue. You might make 100 grand. You might make 200 grand, something like that. So what's $100,000 worth? Is that worth 10 or 15 grand? Of course. Who wouldn't pay 15 grand to make $100,000? But who would pay 15 grand if they don't know what they're going to make? Especially if they feel like they can get the same technical services for cheaper later. And so, or from somebody else. And so again, you're now avoiding all the bad problems. You're avoiding the misaligned incentives because your whole goal is to make revenue grow for your client. And you've thought about what that takes and you've got a solution for that. And you don't have to take on all the risk up front because you get paid for the build out and you get paid for the marketing. You don't have to have any kind of a runway really to profitability because as soon as you land the client, boom, you make some money right off the bat. That gives you the time and the resources to really do your best work. And you're not locking yourself into any sort of hourly pricing ceiling because you're basically value pricing the entire solution. The build and the recurring revenue part is all value price. And it doesn't really matter how many hours it takes or whether you do the hours or someone else does the hours. You price it based on the value. And so you wouldn't offer the project if it wasn't going to be profitable both to you and to your client. And so there's a bunch of metrics that kind of go into it that kind of help you figure out the exact numbers and so forth. But that's the overall structure. So that's why DoubleStack is such a powerful thing because you get all the good stuff by avoiding all the bad stuff all at the same time, and it ends up being really cool. It's the big mindset behind it is it's like you're offering your client something better than even a free website. So like, you remember we were talking about like the website leasing or the website renting idea, or maybe even the rank and the rent thing or whatever. It's like the reason you do those is to avoid trying to get your client to say, well, let me spend $10,000 on a website or whatever. But if you actually offer a complete solution that generates your client like 100 grand over the course of a year or something like that, and you sell it to them for something less than 100 grand, then it's free. It's better than free. It's like they make money because they hired you. And so that's the overall idea. It's like you're kind of offering free websites in a way, or even better than free websites because of this new solution, which of course makes you feel good. It makes them feel good. It makes everybody excited, and everyone wins. Like all of your needs are met, all of their needs are met, and you win. And so that's a really, really cool thing. And there's a lot that goes into it, right? So it's not just the pricing model, but I wanted to kind of go through all the different pricing models so you can kind of see what the differences are. But then when you land on this DoubleStack model, which obviously I'm biased because I kind of created the model, but I love the model because everybody wins. It's great for everyone. And you end up getting into a situation where you then also have to reconsider other components of your business too. Like, how do you attract clients looking for this kind of stuff and not attract the clients that just want you to do like a quick single thing? Because the whole idea is they're not hiring you for a one and done project. Like the monthly retainer, the recurring revenue, all of that stuff is baked into the mix from the very beginning. And you're changing the story that you tell about who you are, about what your business stands for, about the clients you're really wanting to work with. And the new story is, the old story would have been, hey, I'm going to build this website and give it to you. I mean, that's what the standard 50/50 is all about. That's what the time and materials thing is all about. That's really what the rank and rent's all about. It's what the website leasing is all about. It tends to be, hey, let me build this thing. And, varying degrees of effort go into what you do up front. But basically it's, let me build this thing and then give it to you. The new story is, hey, I'm going to set up some tools and then we're going to use them together. And that's why you make 100 grand a year. That's the new story. And so the recurring revenue component, which generally is where about 2/3 of your annual revenue comes from that client, it's baked into the mix. It's like they don't hire you if they don't plan to do the recurring revenue side. Nobody would just say, hey, I want to buy a car, but I'm never going to drive it, right? Like, or I'd like to buy a car without the gas tank or whatever. It's like they hire you because they want you. That's one of the huge things that I try to emphasize, really above all else, is you want people to hire you. Like you want people to work with you. You don't really want clients looking just for the stuff you can produce. Because if they're just looking for the stuff you can produce, and you want to go high ticket, which is what we talk about here in building high value WordPress sites, if that's your plan, then you don't really win at that if the value is in just the technical stuff that you generate. Because what you do is you put the high ticket price on, well, that's more expensive than I thought, and then they go to somewhere else. And basically you're kind of just blending into the noise. You're just a commodity. There's really no authority. There's no expert kind of perception of who you are with that approach. But with this approach, you are going high ticket. You've got all of the good stuff. You're avoiding all of the bad stuff. And that means it's going to change not only your pricing model, which we just spent all this time talking about, but it also changes probably some of the technical tools you use, because you're going to get some marketing stuff into the mix, not just pure web design. And then, of course, it actually changes your marketing story. It changes the way you meet with clients. Like you don't have to do like these discovery sessions and all this other kind of low budget alternative style meetings with clients and stuff. And then it changes the way that you write proposals. It changes, obviously, your pricing. So many things change by shifting to this new model, which is the whole point of why I created a whole course to teach people how to do it. In fact, well, not even that. It's like, I'll show you specifically, like we'll work together and, get that up to speed for you. But it's a big shift. But the foundational aspect of it, and the reason that it's so successful and why it works so well, is because you get all the good stuff while avoiding all the bad stuff. So, and again, just to kind of summarize, you get the high earning potential, you get the recurring revenue, you get a pricing structure that's clear for everyone, it's easy and fun to sell, everybody's winning and having fun, and you avoid all the misaligned incentives. You don't have to take on all the risk. You're not giving, you're not putting yourself in a position where you can't succeed. There's a very short runway to profitability, so you're avoiding that thing where it takes months just to see any money out of it, and you are not locking yourself into any sort of like hourly rate kind of glass ceiling situation. So that's the idea. So those are the different pricing models that are all involved in all of this. And if it sounds good and you want to do this, then let's talk about it. Let's get you in a position where you can kind of take on this new structure for high ticket web design. Now, again, if you're only interested in lower ticket price points, it doesn't really matter that much. Like, you can still go around asking your clients how many pages they want, what they need, and all that other stuff. And then just kind of think of something on the spot that you feel like would be a good solution. Or maybe you have an intake form or something like that people fill out to try to figure out what they need, just like everybody else. And it's okay. Like, if your price point's in like the $1,500 or lower price point, and you're nice, then people will work with you. But if you want to charge like $15,000 instead of $1,500, you're going to have to do something different. And this is the approach. And ultimately, what it means is you're providing a solution that sets you up as an authority, that leads your clients into a level of success that they couldn't get if it wasn't for you. Whereas your old style of intake forums and just interviewing clients and trying to figure out what they want kind of on the fly is not doing that. Like, if you put a high ticket price on your work, they'll just say, well, let me go have one of these getting started interviews with somebody else who might charge $1,500 instead of $15,000. So it really comes down to your mindset and like, what do you want out of your business? Are you just trying to create a job for yourself, or you're just, taking work from marketing agencies, or just willy-nilly finding people that just kind of get referred to you by word of mouth or something, and you just try to offer these cheap sites or whatever? Or are you trying to build like a business that you can scale to like 6 figures and beyond, and do it with a workload that's reasonable for you, right? So have a real business that you can be proud of. So that's the big idea. And if you want to go to that higher ticket price point where you're actually having an impact with your clients, and that's why you generate the kind of revenue you're talking about, it requires a fundamental shift of the way that you define yourself, the type of leads you attract, and the way you meet with clients, your proposal structure, like all of that stuff needs to kind of be brought into this new arena. So anyway, so if that sounds good to you and you kind of want to make that shift, and this sounds like the approach you want to take, let's talk about it. Let's get on the phone and dive into what kind of markets are you shooting for, and what kind of clients are you looking for, or what kind of skill sets are you the best at? Because that's another thing you really want to emphasize. You want clients that want you to do the stuff you're the best at. You don't want somebody to call you up and be like, hey, Ramon, are you able to migrate all my contacts into Salesforce or something? And of course, you'd probably say yes because you could, but that's not your forte. That's not what you're passionate about. It's not what you're the best at. It's like, why not hire people who want you to do the stuff you're the best at? Because that's the stuff you can charge the most for, because you're the best. You're the best at that. That's your best stuff. And on top of it, let's not get people hiring you just do one thing that you're good at. How about hire you for all the stuff that you're the best at? And that's where you really crank the lever on your earning potential, because you're getting people that hire you to do your best stuff, which is the stuff you can charge the most for, and they're buying a bunch of things all at once, all of your best stuff. So you have the quantity there too. So head over to doublestack.net/call. So it's doublestack.net/call, and we'll get on the phone with each other and really put this stuff into play so that you can bring all of this stuff to life and kind of move into this high ticket realm of web design consulting. So you're making the money that you're actually should be making, and having the impact that you should be having, and helping clients at the level that they really need and are counting on you for, and you're setting yourself up to be successful at that level. So head over to doublestack.net/call, and you'll see my calendar pop up. Find a time that works well for you. We'll get on the phone for like 45 minutes, and we kind of will start going through step by step. What's your business look like today? What are the skills that you feel like you're really, really good at? And how can we find the types of clients you really want versus the kind of clients that maybe are coming in right now? And there you go. And then got this new structure that you'll be able to take as high as you want. And you'll probably be able to make 6 figures on your own. Like that's kind of the limit. You about 120 grand kind of money in your pocket on your own as like a solopreneur. And then you have the decision, do you scale out like an agency and that kind of a thing too? So if you want to, you kind of take your revenue up beyond that, you can. And this is obviously I'm not guaranteeing that everybody that calls is going to make $100 million overnight, but I'm giving you a structure that you can scale. And that's the whole point of what we just talked about. And what pricing structures are you going to be able to scale to the level that you need to hit your income goals for the stuff that you're trying to do? And this is the one. This is the one that works the best. This is the one that I do. It's the one that the other double stackers do. I've been doing it for 18 years, and it absolutely works. So if that's what you're looking for, I'm more than willing to jump on the phone with you, 45 minutes, kind of walk you through the details of how everything kind of fits together. And there we go. So head over to doublestack.net/call. Look forward to talking to you. And it was good connecting in on a Thursday, even though it's not normally our normal Tuesday time together. So high five to you. Boop. Looking forward to talking, and see you again next week.